I'm back on the Super Hawk project. The plan was to have this, I guess, part 12 be about painting and priming this tank. But unfortunately, winter's back. So it's what, May 9th or 10th, and yesterday we had snow. Today's not a whole lot warmer. So there's no way I'm going to be able to do any painting today. So instead, we're going to do some bike shuffling here at the CB160 project's complete. I'll up a video about that as soon as it warms up enough to get it outside and start it up. But I need to pull the Super Hawk back out because unfortunately I have to pull the engine again to sort out that oil leak. If you saw part 11 where we started this up, you pointed out there's an oil leak coming from that area down there. So I think the best way to address that is going to be to get this engine back on the bench and start digging into it. So since I can't ride today, I might as well be making some progress on that. Alright, we got things shuffled around here, and now I guess it's time to pull this poor engine back out. I managed to wrestle this thing back up on the bench, hopefully for the last time. What I'm going to try to do is get this head off without disturbing the base gasket. That would be best case scenario. I don't want to have to pull the cylinders off and deal with pistons, and the oil leak is actually right in this area here. So I'm hoping I can just get this off, and I don't know if the gasket's bad or what. We'll find that out when we get in there, but I'm trying to do as little work here as possible and replace as few gaskets as possible. So I've already pulled this thing apart twice, so that was 2 sets of gaskets. I'd like to just get this fixed, get it on the road, and actually ride this thing, because believe it or not, while I've owned a Super Hawk for 5 or 6 years, I've never actually ridden one because it didn't run when I bought it. I got it just barely running and then started the restoration. So I'm kind of anxious to ride this thing. Well, I'm an idiot. I don't actually need to take these end caps off to do what I need to do. For some reason I had in my head that I needed to pull the camshaft out. I think I was thinking of the CB350 I just worked on. Alright, here's where we're at. It's pretty obvious which side it was seated better. This was the side that was not leaking. You can see the gasket completely kind of delaminated there when I pulled the head back off. There's plenty of gasket residue left there, I guess. Now the side that was leaking, I haven't scraped this clean. That just is this clean because even the copper, I always use this spray gasket stuff when I'm putting these back together, and it's all here still. None of it stuck to the cylinders like it should have. And the compression was not an issue. And you can see we got a good seal around where these metal rings compress, and actually that's the only spot on this side. This black stuff here isn't carbon, that's part of the gasket material. So that was sealed well. I had thought maybe I forgot the O-ring. There's a a dowel pin that goes here and the O-ring goes around it. You can see on this side. This is the side with the oil leak. It was just kind of weeping down here when the engine was running. And I was hoping that I just made a bonehead mistake and forgot that O-ring, and easy fix, new gasket, put it together. Unfortunately, that's not the case. The O-ring is there. And what I think is the problem, and I don't know if the camera's going to pick it up. I took a still shot. If it doesn't, I'll cut it in here. But the cylinder sleeve is raised just, let me see if I can get it to focus. Come on, just a little bit. And it's not, the gasket material makes it look a little worse than it is, but it's definitely raised. I can feel it there with my fingernail. On this side, it's not. So I'm assuming it should not be raised. Otherwise, gaskets don't seal. Obviously, we're seeing that right now. So I don't know what would have caused that. I don't know what my options are at this point. I'm going to have to get online and do a little bit of research. But I think we've found our problem there. All right, guys, it's the next day. I haven't gone any further with the disassembly than you saw a minute ago. I did get all the gasket material scraped off, the parts that I have removed so far. I did get confirmation of what I had suspected, that no, this cylinder sleeve should not be raised above the deck, and yes, it is a problem. Obviously, it was at the very least causing an oil leak, and it does need to be resolved. The solution sounds relatively straightforward. I basically need to pull these cylinders, get them cleaned up, set them up in the oven, and heat them up. And I guess there's a couple different ways I can go about it. Just set a fire brick or something heavy and not flammable on top of this sleeve and hope that it just settles back into place. The concern there is if there's any kind of grit underneath the lip of the sleeve, it's not going to settle in, and I'm going to have to basically flip it over and drop that sleeve at least partially out. And then obviously once I've got it cleaned out, I've got to heat it up again for it to drop back into place. So at the very least, we're looking at potentially 2 to 3 rounds of heating this thing up. So I think I'm just going to assume there is grit under here. So I'm going to first heat it upside down, see if I can get this one, and I'm going to go ahead and this one may just drop out. I've read different accounts of how this can go. See if I can get these to drop partially out so that I can check the lip underneath here, make sure that's all clean. And if it is, turn them back over, set something heavy on top of them, and get them to drop back into the correct position. After talking with Steve from the Honda Twins forums, he kind of gave me some pointers and walked me through the process. So I'm going to get set up here shortly and we'll give this a go. Basically what we're going to do is set this up upside down with some fire bricks in the oven, and hopefully with some heat and some time these will slide out an inch or two, and I can clean up any garbage, and I can kind of see some here in this little groove here, so I would imagine there's more. So need these guys to slide out and clean up the underside of the cylinders. This one has a little bit of an edge too, but it wasn't enough to cause the oil leaks, but we're going to do them both anyways. So once those are dropped out and it cools down, they should stick in place. Hopefully they're an inch or two above the deck there. I can get in there with a little wire brush and clean everything out, and then we'll do basically the same process again, except they'll be sitting in this orientation. Fire brick on top for a little bit of weight, heat them back up, and with some luck they'll drop back into place flush with the deck here. So I have never done this before. Hopefully it goes well. Let me go get the necessary supplies and we'll get set up and see what happens. Before I forget here, one of Steve's recommendations was to make some index marks just in case these cylinders would slide out and somehow get jostled, because they're not brand new, and ideally I'm not going to have them rebored. They're not perfectly round anymore, so we want them to go back in place exactly where they are. Otherwise we could have some leaking issues. So I'm not sure if this Sharpie is gonna stay on here in the heat, but this should be good enough to let me know that everything is where it started out. So just Sharpie, made some marks. Let's go get the oven set up. Alright, so here's our setup. We have the fire bricks and the kids made. Parker, you want to grab our little pillows and put them in place? Yep.
Okay. This is hot.
No, that's not hot. So I didn't have anything fireproof to cushion these, so the kids and I made little landing pillows out of aluminum foil, and hopefully they keep these cylinders, if they happen to drop out really fast, from doing any damage to anything. So Ellie, you want to grab me one more fire brick? We're going to put one on top. And then, alright, so, and then why don't you, can you hold, who wants to hold this for a minute? Just hold that, get that.
Can I hold it like this?
In the oven, hold it however you want to hold it. I don't think oh, that's heavy. I don't think I'm forgetting anything.
I followed it in.
Alright.
I told my mom she was going to come out and get her own wipes.
I'm trying to do this so far. Oh wait, hey guys, one of them fell through. Alright, so it's been almost an hour. We've got one dropped out, the other one has not. I'm going to let this cool down and then kind of repeat the process, because if everything's the same temperature at this point, I don't know if the other one is going to drop out. Well, we were partially successful. We got one cylinder to drop out. I think it took about 25 or 30 minutes at 350 degrees. I don't know why this one didn't budge, and I let the whole setup cool back down to room temperature, retried everything again at 400 degrees. I even would open the oven every maybe 5 or 10 minutes and give it a good whack with a piece of 2x4, and it hasn't budged at all. Fortunately, the one that did drop out was the problem sleeve to begin with. This is the one that was raised up a little bit above the deck. So, and maybe that explains why it came out easier than the other one. It had already been partially dislodged. Either way, I've decided after sleeping on it, I'm not going to push my luck. I don't actually need this one to come out for this fix. And I don't want to risk breaking something because these parts cost a fortune these days. And if I have to replace the sleeves, odds are I'm going to have the machine shop bore things out, and then we're into a whole nother level of cost and delays. And I really just want to get this thing back together and get it on the road. So you can see it dropped out. The kids' little aluminum foil pillows did their job. I landed right on there. So if you ever need something that won't catch fire, that'll pad your cylinders, I guess, a little aluminum foil pillows worked just fine. There's certainly plenty of crud in this groove here, and I don't know what this stuff is. First I thought, oh shit, I pulled some aluminum out of there somehow, but no, it's some kind of adhesive, or I don't know what it almost looks like Honda Bond, but it's too shiny. It's almost like it really looks like, it's not going to focus here, kind of aluminum, but it's some kind of flexible stuff. So I don't think I was the first person to have this engine apart. So it's possible that, I mean, you can see come out focus. There we go. So it's possible that this has been a problem for longer than me owning the bike, and maybe their fix was to gob some kind of gasket maker or something on there, and that's what I'm seeing in there. I don't know, but there's definitely grit and crud under there. So I think I made the right choice in kind of dropping this out. I'll clean this up rather than just trying to stack stuff on it and get it to settle flush. I don't know that it would have done that with all this garbage in there. So that's the next step. I'm gonna clean this up. If I have to, I'll get a little wire wheel and the Dremel and make sure everything's nice and clean, and then basically do the process in reverse. We'll set this up, stack a brick or two on top of this, heat it up, and with a little luck, we'll drop straight down, flush with the deck here, and we can move on. Well, it's another day, and unfortunately, we are right back to where we started. So I ran this thing back through the oven, got this cylinder to drop back down, and unfortunately, it's still not sitting flush. I'm going to do this one more time. I'm going to see if I can get this cylinder sleeve all the way out, and then I can take some measurements. At this point, I'm running out of ideas. I was even back on eBay last night pricing these things out. The problem is I cannot find a new old stock complete set. I can find new old stock sleeves. If it's a problem with the actual cylinder body and not the sleeve, having new sleeves isn't going to make a difference anyways. So before I go and buy anything, I want to see if I can find some kind of anomaly with what I have, and then try to come up with the right course of action. All right, another quick little update. Could not get this thing seated back at the level I was hoping for, and here's why. So I took this back out, repeated the same process you saw a minute ago, but took it all the way out this time because I wanted to measure the depth of this groove and the height of this lip to make sure they were even the same measurement. So I'm just gonna put this upside down here, set that in, and it's gonna be tough to get it to focus, but it is not the same. So no matter what I did, this thing was not going to sit flush with the surface here. So I need to figure out what my options are, other than buying any new parts, hopefully. So just wanted, before I go any further, just do a quick little update. But my theory is this sleeve is not original to this cylinders. I can't imagine this came from Honda this way. This would have been machined flush. So it's possible this sleeve and maybe even the other sleeve, which still refuses to come out, are not original, and whoever replaced them did not have them machined flush with the cylinder body surface. So there's where we're at. To be continued. Alright, some of you are going to cringe when you see what I'm about to do, but I know this is not the correct way to do this. This is not a how-to. This is just me making do with what I have on hand and trying to get this bike back on the road. So, here we go. Alright, so I forgot to show up, but I had covered this surface with Sharpie, just as a reference. I was not really, other than pressure to keep it straight, or I guess perpendicular to the blade, I was not pushing at the blade, because these things do have a little bit of flex on them. But basically using this as a big flat grinding disc. So now I'm going to go upstairs and then go through. I've got some 80 grit right now, work my way up to 400, getting these little nicks and scratches off. But we were just a hair away from having this the right thickness to fit in that groove. Again, this is not the right way to do this. It's just how I'm doing it. Worst case, I was going to have everything machined anyways. So if I'm able to fix it on my own, great. If not, I was looking at sending this somewhere anyway. So figured it was worth a shot. Okay, so here's the cylinders after sanding of the right one here, as you probably just saw. Took quite a bit. Obviously, cast iron, it's not going to sand away too easy, but I just kept sand for a few minutes, kind of check it for clearance here, and then once it seemed like it was pretty close, back in the oven it went for, I think I went about 375 this time, for about a half an hour, and then I was able to I had the fire brick setting on it, and I had one of my welding gloves, I was able to just push it down the rest of the way, and it seated here. I ended up removing these studs, taped some 400 grit sandpaper to the countertop upstairs, and then just kind of lapped the whole thing on. I don't know if that's the right term or not, but basically, and I didn't have any machinist dye, so I took a big old Sharpie and colored most of this surface just to see if everything was coming off evenly, and fortunately it was. I'm going to clean everything back up and get this put back together. it's easier to try and get this chain in place before you put the cylinder head on, because you kind of have to rock it back and forth, and once the cylinder head's on, you just don't have the room. That's why I'm doing this. The pipes with the nuts on top are holding the cylinders in place, so that when I crank it around, it's not going to shove the cylinders up. So that keeps them in place. It's plastic, it's not going to scuff anything up, and it lets me kind of rock the crank back and forth so I can get enough chain and get the two ends positioned basically as high, as close to the top center as I can. And I'm keeping an eye on the rotor here, because I want this lined up at T, with the T mark. That way when I go to put the head on and get everything lined up, things are pretty much in place already. It's just way easier to do it now than later on. Alright guys, you've seen me take this engine out, you've seen me put it in. I'm not going to bore you with me putting it in again, back in the frame again. So this video is getting super long. I don't know if I'm going to end it here, or it kind of depends on if I run into any problems getting back in the frame. Hopefully I don't. So if it goes smoothly and the weather cooperates, hopefully I can start this thing up, and we'll see if this oil leak's fixed. This has been a lot more involved than I expected it to, but this is what you get when you're working on these old bikes. So I gotta jump back over on the CB160 project for a little while, and then get this engine back in the frame and start it up, and hopefully after that we can move on to painting. So if you've stuck with me for this long, I really appreciate it. I know this video got really long. There's a lot of explanation. I felt it was necessary to keep some of the explanation in rather than just do a time lapse of the whole thing, because without the explanation, a lot of the why I was doing what I was doing wouldn't really make sense. So as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.